is located on 111,000 hectares of private land in the heart of the Chulu Hills between Kenya's Tsavo and Amboseli National Parks. My name is Ralph Kirsten, and as per usual, I wonder what the bush holds in store for us today. Well, you'll just have to sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. And as per usual as well, please don't forget that this is a live and interactive experience, so we'd love for you to jump on board with us. Send us through your questions and your comments. You can do that by going on the WildEarth website and registering. This being one of our busiest of all the waterholes, and it's not disappointing once again. 3 lovely big Tusker elephant bulls, as well as some fringe-eared oryx. There was a warthog there, and we've got some eland as well. We do often see some birds coming down to drink here too, and just before the show started there were some secretary birds, but unfortunately, as we find with the birds, they like to disappear just before we go live. However, if the animals do dissipate a little bit, you'll probably see some of these cutthroat finches that have been coming in, and it's a new bird for me, but we've been seeing them on a regular basis here, and we've also seen quite a few predatory birds coming in as well. We've had an African hawk eagle, and there was a gymnogene at some stage as well that came in for a drink and a bath. So I wonder what birds we're going to spot today. And Anna Marie, welcome aboard. Thanks for your comment. Always good to have you with us. And well, as I say, we can't see the Mount Kilimanjaro off in the background there. It seems a little bit hazy, although there is a little bit of cloud around. It's a bit clearer than we've had in the last little while. So I think it's going to be a great day for animals coming down for a drink. I haven't witnessed any breeding herds coming down to drink here. It's only been the bulls, but what magnificent beasts they are. A couple of days ago we had about 10 of them here, and some with huge tusks. And I think the one that we saw might be the one that they call 1 ton. I have seen this one on the right with his floppy ear. I think he's probably been the most familiar of all of these guys, but he is also the easiest to recognize. So Sasha, I'm not sure if there are wildebeest that come through here. I haven't seen any, but it wouldn't be surprising if they did. But for now, it's mainly just zebra. They're probably in the biggest numbers. We've seen a couple of gazelle, not too many of them. Grants and Thompsons. We've seen both, but just a couple individuals. And then it's mainly the fringe-eared oryx, the eland, and of course these big elephant bulls. And of course, there's a lovely mix of different locations that we will be jumping around to, and from different perspectives as well. This camera, probably the lowest to the ground. The cat eye in the greater Kruger National Park area, that one is a little bit higher than this, and as the name suggests, at the level of sort of a cat's eyes. And then some of the others a bit more of an overlooking perspective. So it's just great to get a nice range. Righty, so as we see here, it's quite clear, although we can't see Mount Kilimanjaro in the background, and I am predicting that it's probably going to be quite warm at some of the locations. Maybe there'll be a little bit of overcast weather being blown in by this particularly strange weather that we're having up the east and west coast. But speaking of that, let's go and have a look what the weather's going to be like across all the different locations. So we can see there quite a range of different temperatures, and the locations are very far apart. So it is understandable, but that weather that I'm talking about, there's huge seas from the Western Cape into the Eastern Cape. There's been quite a lot of warnings put out by the NSRI, so anybody living down on the coast, please be careful. There's been lots of vehicles washed away. There's been some restaurants where the waves have bashed straight through into where the people are having their meals. One in particular, the Brass Bell down in Cork Bay. People had quite a surprise there with the waves going right through the window and into their meal area. So hope everybody's safe. And here where I live in Port Alfred, the whole of town has been underwater yesterday. So it's quite impressive seas currently. So Andrew, the video guy, you obviously have some skills there, and this is a beautiful angle. I like that low angle. Now, we also do talk of, well, I'm no photographer or videographer myself, but I know they speak of the principle of 1/3 or 2/3. I'm not quite sure, Andrew, the video guy, maybe you can let me know. But from this perspective and looking up at the animals, it's just for a wonderful viewing. So Ryan Devon boy, it is very symmetrical. I mean, these three bulls here just really making an idyllic scene. I think there is a little bit of consternation between them. It seems a bit of dominance display at play. I'm not sure. I thought that one with the floppy ear was rather dominant amongst these bulls, but it seems that one on the right there actually has got his number. I'm not quite sure. Maybe it was just a little implication they had, and who knows. We do notice that the elephants don't just come and drink here. They also spend a lot of time milling about. I think it's a lot of social interaction, chatting between them, lots of communication at play.
Hi, my name is Claire. WildEarth has been part of this home for many years as it connects us to the bush and the culture that we love and miss so much. I became an explorer so that other people around the world can get to experience the African bush in this unique way as well. I am beyond excited that I was drawn to win the prize at Ambakala Game Reserve for 3 nights. It is truly a dream come true.
Sign up today and you could be the one experiencing it for yourself.
We can see quite a few of these zebra coming through on the right now. It depends on how many of them there are, but they may even push these elephants out if there's a lot of them. Otherwise, they might have to sit back and wait their turn. So we see now just here in the foreground as well, looks like a little agama that's made its way onto the scene, a lizard, just on the right here with a yellow head. Oh, it looks like there's a female there. Is that what he's displaying about? Yeah, looks like it. Doesn't look like his head bobbing has made any impression on that female. She's disappeared off onto the right, onto the left, should I say. Righty, so as always, always busy here at Old Donyo, but we've got lots of locations to jump around to, and I think we'll change of place now, but we're going to go into the northwest province of South Africa, the Madikwe Game Reserve, just on the border of Botswana and Jamala. Well, there's just a complete different setting, a lot more arid, and so this is a semi-arid region where there's not as much rain as they get in the East Africa parts of Kenya and there at Old Donyo. So you can see how dry it is, how brown it is, and we really do hope that there's going to be some rain here sometime soon. Yesterday, this was full up with elephants, so I'm expecting today to be no different. It looks like very similar conditions that we did have yesterday. It's probably going to be very hot, so for the elephants to come down, you can pretty much bet on it. Nice little family of warthogs there. They were also in the mud enjoying it yesterday. So were the buffaloes. That one group of buffalo bulls or Dugga boys, they were rolling around in the mud. And then there were youngsters as well of the elephants, nice breeding herds that were here. And there was lots of playtime going on. Bush Barbie. Nice question, that. I haven't really seen any of the antelope wallowing. I don't know if it's well, I can't even say it's a size thing. Otherwise, you wouldn't get warthogs doing it. But they seem to be a lot more nervous of the water. I think it's down to prevalence of crocodiles. We see them swimming in Okukuyu, the springbok and oryx or gemsbok in particular is quite special because they're a truly desert adapted species, so they don't even need to drink water in their entire lives, but they're the ones that enjoy the water the most. But they don't really wallow like the likes of warthog, buffalo, rhino, elephants. But as I say, we experienced them swimming there to some degree. Now, we don't see them wallowing, but the dusk bathers are the blue wildebeest and the zebra. They're quite particular in they like looking for a nice dusty patch and rolling around in it. But other than that, I don't know of any antelope, or haven't seen any in my experience, wallowing per se. You might also put it down to their very sort of sharp toes and their hooves. I think they quite easily get stuck in the mud because they don't have very much room on the feet itself. So they cut into the mud, and it goes in obviously like the stilt-like legs that we've got on these impala. And then I think they find it rather difficult to exit the mud. And we have seen in the past many antelope getting stuck in the mud as they try to access water that's dwindling and the mud that comes with it. So I think with all of that, there's probably a bit too much risk for them to actually go in and wallow. You can see these impala, they're even nervous of this water, but even though there's no crocodiles here, there are crocodiles prevalent on the reserve where there's rivers flowing through. So even though there's none in here, they still are very nervous of that element, water, and thinking that of that danger that lurks within. So, Daniela, absolutely, predators will take advantage of antelope that are stuck in the mud. I've seen it mostly with wild dogs, but they also do sort of struggle to get into them. But their paws, I think, obviously, there's a bigger surface area to their paws, and I've seen wild dogs pulling an inyala out of the mud. And But they also find it a little bit difficult to get into the mud. But yeah, they most definitely take advantage of anything that will be stuck in the mud that they could feed on. So I've seen it a few times. But anybody have any other stories of antelope getting stuck in the mud and then the predators taking advantage? Let us know. This is that time of year when you could have these kind of mishaps where the animals do get stuck in the mud because it's coming to the end of the dry season and we never know when the rain's going to arrive. But getting very dry, very hot. And so the animals do then start taking chances when there's not much water and they'll walk through the mud to try and get access to that. And that's when, unfortunately, sometimes they get stuck. Righty, so different perspectives that we've got here in comparison to Old Donyo, but let's change perspective again and let's head to the Olifants West Reserve in the Greater Kruger National Park and Africam Cat Eye. So a little bit different perspective, similar to Old Donyo, but not only that, it's also very different weather here as well. So we can see the system that's moved up the east coast and then gone into the areas around the Lowveld. So lots of clouds around, but at least we've still got some animals drinking. And what be these? Kudu. Over the last few days, it's been quite sunny here, so the clouds have now pulled in. But because of it being sunny, we've seen the terrapins out on that little mound of dirt in the waterhole itself and putting up their best Grandmaster Uguay from Kung Fu Panda impressions. Nice young kudu bull in the middle of these females. He's still on his first turn on his horns, so he's probably just over a year or so old, year and a half or so. Now, Yolanda, that's an interesting comment. I never thought of that. And when the kudu lift up their heads, it does look like they've been sipping milkshakes, doesn't it? And they've been or eating ice cream with that white markings around their mouth. I like it. Looks like there has been a little bit of rain here. You can see some dots on the screen. And obviously these are remote cameras, so it's not as easy for us to whip out a chamois and quickly wipe the screen. Sorry for that. As we do follow the kudu, we can also see this fork-tailed drongo in this little Vachilia bush. Looks like a sweet thorn. And off he goes, following in behind these animals as they move, because they'll be bumping up insects, and so then making it available for that little honey badger of the sky, aka the fork-tailed drongo. I say the honey badger of the sky because they're pretty much scared of nothing. And being such a little bird, they're normally the first to be mobbing a bird of prey. Doesn't matter how big it is, from a martial eagle to black eagle, fish eagle, whatever it might be. If there's any bird that's going to take it on, it's going to be a fork-tailed drongo. They're also fantastic mimickers, so they can call like the pearl-spotted owlet, they can make a black-headed oriole call, they can call like a little Cape scrub robin, and then they have their own call as well, which sounds like R2-D2 from Star Wars. It's a little bit of grey weather, and I think there is a bit of rain coming in. So I think we're going to leave this dark place and let's head back to the Madikwe Game Reserve. But this time, change of place. Let's go to Africam Tower. The place of the lion. No lions present currently. They're probably off in the thickets, sleeping, getting out of the sun. But, well, this is great weather for the crocodiles. You can see one big individual here just in front of these two nice-looking kudu bulls. But yesterday there was lots of activity, actually, from the crocodiles, which was great to see because coming out of winter, I'm sure they're going to be quite hungry, not having fed too much in the recent months. There was an elephant bull. He was having a whale of a time in the mud, and the crocodile was swimming all around it. I thought he was taking on a little bit too much, but having thought about it, maybe he was just moving around the elephant because it could have been bumping out some catfish or anything that was in the shallows. Maybe that's what it was more about. We normally have excellent birding here as well, so we'll see a good range of birds, waterfowl, and the rest. And normally lots of zebra, blue wildebeest, of course the elephants. As the day gets hotter, I'm sure will be coming through as well. Now, Slinky, yes, indeed. I've seen crocodiles hunting quite regularly, taking birds, taking impala, And we had quite a sad. I witnessed it, but it was on Wild Earth actually, where a crocodile took one of a three male coalition of cheetah. So pulled him into the waterhole as well, which was sad. But that's it. You can't when there's crocodiles present, anything is game, and they'll even grab onto an elephant's trunk. So we saw this one of these crocodiles actually swimming up to a small breeding herd of elephants where there were youngsters, and luckily for them, it didn't grab onto one of their trunks. But that is also a regular occurrence; it can happen. I've had a wonderful encounter actually on the bridge over the Limpopo River, the Lavuvu River up in Pafuri, where I watched a few crocodiles actually take out some baby buffalo as they were swimming across the river. They swam up, and a couple of the little young ones just disappeared. So we didn't actually see what happened after that, but it was certain that the crocodiles had taken the young buffaloes. And there was a lot of milling around after the buffalo reached the bank on the opposite side. And so they obviously were looking for the youngsters, but they were nowhere to be found. Obviously, food for the crocs. We've also seen this a lot in the Masai Mara, and in particular the Mara River, where the zebra and the wildebeest cross there. But it's normally quite a non-event almost, because you see the animals swimming and you see that sort of wake from the crocodile swimming towards them, and then suddenly one of the animals just disappears. So I haven't seen too many of the crocodiles actually attacking animals on the bank, just on a sort of two or three occasions, and it's all been impala, where the croc has launched and grabbed it and pulled it in. But it's generally actually when animals are swimming across a river that I've witnessed them disappear as the crocodiles grab onto them. There's some white-faced whistling ducks. They also seem to be resident here at this waterhole, but this isn't a very deep waterhole as well. So it's quite difficult, I think, for these crocodiles to take anything big, because that's their modus operandi. Is they normally grab something big on the shoreline and then drag it and pull it backwards into the deeper areas and then drown it. And then immediately they'll start to do what they call the death roll, which is they can do that to drown the animal as well, because they've got one of the strongest bite downs in the bush anywhere of all the animals. They find it difficult to open their mouth, but snapping down is incredibly strong. And so they snap down on an animal. Once they've got it gripped, there's almost no way to get out of that grip, and then they start spinning. And you can think if you're spinning in the water, you can very quickly drown. And so that's what they do, the death roll. And then they might even go and pin it under the water so that it is completely dead. And then they have it sort of stored there as well, and they can almost go and feed at leisure. So in the past, there was a belief that crocodiles prefer rotting meat, but it's a fallacy. It was down to the nature of them pulling animals down, too big to eat in one sitting, and then they store it in the water. And so then very often people would witness that the crocodiles are feeding on rotting carcasses. But it's not that they prefer it. It's just that they have that in storage, and they will feed on it, even though it's rotting. They've got the stomach acids to deal with all the bacteria that comes with rotting flesh. Really looking menacing are these flat dogs. And these white-faced whistling ducks here in the foreground. Always in a sizable group, of 5, 6 plus. Sometimes they can be up to 30 of them or so. A very high-pitched squeaking call. hence the name. So Les, yes, they can do that because obviously if their meal floats up to the surface, it's inevitably also going to wash over to the side of the water as well, and then it's going to be game for any of the scavenging predators, which is basically all predators, lions included, hyenas, jackals, whatever else might want to feed on carrion. So they might lose their meal. So it makes sense for the crocodiles to pin it in the water, and then it remains theirs and it's nicely stored. But I've said it previously and I'll say it again. A very good friend of mine was involved in a documentary in the Okavango Delta from in the Panhandle, and it's called Into the Dragon's Lair. Go and look that up on YouTube. It is absolutely fascinating where these divers go into the water and go in with the crocodiles, getting close-up views. It's absolute madness, but very interesting all the same. As we see this black-winged stilt and the red-knobbed coot. That coot really getting into its little bath now. Flapping its wings, getting rid of the excess oils. That's the maintenance done. Now, I've also spoken about crocodiles being one of the only reptiles to perform parental care. I can't think of any other reptiles that do this because most reptiles just lay their eggs and then leave the babies to fend for themselves. But does anybody know of any other reptiles, wherever it is in the world, that perform parental care? If you do, please let me know and let's get chatting. And it has been said that, I haven't witnessed it, but the owners here at the Tau Lodge have said that these crocodiles have nested, but the nests continuously get dug up by the likes of monitor lizards, honey badgers, etc. And so they've never gotten to the point that the little crocklets have hatched. So it's interesting that they haven't been successful here at all. And this one opening its mouth now nicely, must be getting relatively hot. So that's a bit of thermoregulation, getting rid of excess heat when they open their mouth like that. Wow, it's really opening it.
Are you WildEarth's biggest fan? Well, we have a brand new competition for you. Join our naturalists on Safari Live and listen out for weekly questions. To enter the competition, head over to our Instagram, search hashtag WildEarth Fan of the Month and comment your answer under the post. The monthly winner will be determined by the total quickest and most correct answers. We announce our winner at the end of every month. Tune in to Safari Live daily.
So, and speaking of changing landscapes, I remember when I was trekking and tracking the desert elephants in Damaraland, Namibia, and I did it for over 4 years, permanently on foot, and I knew the place backwards. I still do, obviously, but it was always surprising for me after the rains had come, and then we would head out, and I would get almost lost because the place looked completely different. Suddenly, where there was just rocks and gravel and sand, and it was red and black and brown, there was grass everywhere. It was green, and it just threw me off completely. I used to have to start looking at my GPS and get the contour maps out and check my landmarks once again, and almost made me feel like an amateur. And then slowly but surely, over the next couple of weeks, it would fade back into its original form. And that's how quickly the life cycles occur there in the desert. But the change that happens after the rains is absolutely incredible. As we see this little three-banded plover just foraging here on the surface of the mud. Right, so nice stop here and a nice change. And speaking of changes, I think we'll change, but back to trusty old favorite. Let's head back to Kenya and Africam Old Donyo. Where, as predicted, it seems the zebras have now ganged up against the elephants. There's only one left. Is it our recognizable floppy ear that's hung around? He seems to be the one most present here at this waterhole. Good to see he still does have movement in that ear. It's obviously some kind of breakdown of the cartilage in the ear itself, or the ear flap. But he still does seem to have function there. Catherine, thanks for your kind words. It's just trying to bring my experience through, and obviously also bring in some research. And at the end of the day, if I'm enjoying myself, well, that's what I always say to my guests. They generally do too. So I hope that comes across to you, the viewers, as well. And with that being said, there's nothing more boring than a guide that is bored. Because if you've ever been on a game drive with a guide like that, it's terrible. So I also used to say to all my students when we trained them for nature guiding and for trails guiding that they need to have a good time. And then that feeds through to the guests, obviously within limits, but yeah, the enjoyment needs to take place. And if you're happy-go-lucky and bringing in new aspects to your drive and to the experiences that you have in the bush, all the guests, and in this case viewers, will just appreciate that too. You can see these oryx are a little bit nervous of this elephant, as you would expect. Nice little close-up view there. And still with this perspective, it just really makes these elephants look huge. They are big, I must say, but they look bigger from this angle. Baobab girl, yes. I've had many guests say that to me. Yeah, I just need to put down all those experiences onto paper. That's the problem. But it's probably a good idea. We should actually do it between a few different experienced guides, and maybe make like a kind of guide storybook. But between a few, I think would be great as well. Now the shape of this particular elephant's tusks, you see how they go outwards a little bit like that, and the length of them as well, really does remind me of the legend Voortrekker, that was one of the dominant bull elephants, of the desert elephants in the Damaraland area. And he was called Voortrekker because he was the first bull to move back into the parts where the elephants had literally been shot out. And he moved back into those parts from the Tosha sort of area, and then a lot of the herds then followed him after that. But he was the one that led the way and moved into the Uchab and the Huab river areas, those ephemeral rivers that runs through there. Yeah, unfortunately, he was dispatched last year, classed as a problem animal, which we all know was not the case. But yeah, so an ode to my very good friend Voortrekker, the massive desert elephant bull in the Uchab regions of Namibia. Ah, and another gentle giant. Nice to have the entrance of a Maasai giraffe, the biggest of all the giraffe. So sorry about that frozen screen. We do get that on occasion at the different remote cameras. So I'm sure it will be back up and running shortly. But anyway, we've headed back to the Madikwe Game Reserve at Jamala. Nice to have a baboon in drinking. We would always think that there's more around. Yep, there sure are. A couple of days ago, we did witness an entire troop of baboons run across the Waterhole, also in Madikwe, but up at Africam Tau, and they went into the lodge area. And I said, and I predicted that if there were people in the lodge area, and most likely the staff, I think it was probably still during game drive time, so the guests were probably out on drive, but the staff were there, it seems, because they went in, and I said they're either going to come running out here very quickly or they're going to trash the place. And lo and behold, it wasn't long, and they all came screaming out, and we could hear pots and pans being banged in the background. Naughty, naughty are the baboons, and especially so if they get into any built up areas. If you've had one that's gotten into your car or into your lodge room or your house or anything like that, you will know about it. They make an absolute mess. I had a friend of mine that studied with me, and he was a ranger at the Mountain Zebra National Park near to Craddock. And so I went down to visit him many years ago, and we then went out on a fishing trip into the Transkei. And when we came back, he had left the bathroom window open, but it's one of those little latch windows. So you just sort of push the latch out, and the baboons had gotten into his house. They had turned the place upside down. Now, what had happened was they'd climbed in the latch and then the window had closed behind them. I don't know how many baboons were in this small little house of his, one bedroom house with a kitchen and a lounge area. They had thrown the fridge on the ground. They had ripped everything out of it. The door was off of the fridge. The toilet was ripped off of the wall. They had defecated, urinated, wiped that all over the walls. They had absolutely destroyed the place. I think I would have been pretty proud of that if it was a New Year's party, but it was disgusting. We actually had to camp outside his house because of how much it stank inside and get in some cleaners, industrial cleaners, to come and sort his place out. So that's just an example of what baboons get up to. If you see them in the Cape Point Nature Reserve down in the Western Cape, there they've become quite aggressive and they're very used to tourists. They jump on your cars and sometimes they can pull off your windscreen wipers, they can pull off your rear view mirrors, etc. So it can be quite scary sometimes as well. That's why actually sometimes guests used to think that I was overly aggressive towards baboons because, on a lot of the camping trips that I did, I would always, as soon as I see a baboon, I chase it away and I throw stones at them and I don't want them anywhere near my camp because of these particular reasons. They'll trash the place. They'll steal your food. They'll empty the dustbin. They'll just make an absolute mess. And if they get into my truck, well, they could also be destroying food that I've stocked up on for the next few days. And sometimes we go to remote areas and it's difficult for us to find any food. So if the baboons have destroyed that, it does affect all of us. But it's also important to remember that as long as they have fear for humans, there's no problem. As soon as they lose that, they become dangerous. And then normally they turn into problem animals, and that's going to result in them most likely being shot. So, being friendly, kind, feeding the likes of baboons can literally sign their death warrant, because sooner or later they're going to injure somebody, and hopefully not too badly, but that's going to result in them being destroyed. Having said that, though, I really enjoy watching baboons in their natural habitat. They are just amazing. Them and monkeys, I can watch all day, as long as they're not near my stuff. And you watch these little youngsters always at play, and I'm sure their antics will keep us entertained now, too. Highly sociable creatures, as with all the primates, and a lot of allo grooming, looking for fleas and ticks. And it does also sort of come through with the hierarchical structure as well. You don't really find a dominant baboon, or not very often, grooming a subordinate. It's normally the other way around. There looks to be a male coming in. Looks like he's giving his companion a bit of a mouthful. And baboons really do walk with swagger, I must say. So a couple more males made their way onto the scene here. This does bode well. I hope they hang around because they are so entertaining to watch. And we might also see just a bit of the interactions between this, in their social structure. As we know, baboons are led by an oligarchy, so a group of dominant males, almost like a gang, and they do lead with an iron fist. So anybody stepping out of line will be told. Now, something that's quite impressive is in Botswana, next to the Chobe National Park and the Chobe Safari Lodge. If anybody's been there recently, I have, and well, I've been there for many years, but just recently, it seems that that troop of baboons there at that lodge has grown exponentially. There must be about 200 of them. And what they do is each night they roost up in the trees that are just on the riverbank right next to the lodge. And then in the early morning at first light, they all come down the trees and they make their way through the lodge and swimming pool area and then go down into their feeding grounds. But it's an absolute procession of these baboons as they run through over the wooden platform, through past the swimming pool, and the staff need to all be on their toes and make sure that everything's packed away for that period. Otherwise, they'll absolutely destroy the restaurant area. So they make their way through and off they go. And then in the afternoon, just before sunset, they come back. And so the staff are ready and waiting for this procession of these baboons to move through. But it's an absolutely amazing thing to witness as well. I was tasked with managing a camp during the rainy season up in Selinda, of the Savuti part of the Okavango. And I literally, there was another massive troop of baboons there. I would say that the largest troops of baboons I've seen is in Botswana. But I saw one, it was also a couple hundred strong. But I had to make sure that the electric fence was on so that they didn't get into camp and come and destroy the place as well. But what I noticed from them, and you might find this amusing as well, is that the females would literally take their baby and put them on the electric wire. And if they got shocked, they didn't enter into the camp. If the baby didn't get shocked, well, then they would all be in immediately. It was just like a sacrificial lamb, and yeah, I found it amusing to watch. And there was one day that I did leave the electric fence off, and I knew immediately because the baby didn't get shocked, and all of these baboons just, and literally a couple of hundred of them were in the camp within seconds. So we had to obviously spring to action and get rid of them before they destroyed the place. And then I remembered after that to keep the electric fence on. So Silky, yes, if you missed it, they are Chacma baboons. So this is the only baboon we get in southern Africa. Um, and this is Papio ursinus, the Latin name. When we go up into East Africa, that's where we get the yellow baboons and the olive baboons. You see, one of the individuals here seems to have a wonky tail. I think it's had a break at some stage. That one there. It's not supposed to stand up like that. It's supposed to hang down. Maybe he's just a bit different. See some of the babies riding jockey style on their mothers. They do that as they grow a little bit. First, when they're first born, they latched onto the mother's nipple underneath, even when they're running. So they almost permanently got access to the milk. But as they grow a little bit, they do start running around on their own. But if there's any sign of anything that they're going to move, they'll quickly run and jump onto their mother's back, and then they ride jockey style. So just having a quick look around to see what else is occurring, because we never do know if there's something exciting happening off on the sides with us not having the peripheral view that we would have if we were there in person. Nice little group of impala, and they seem to move into that area to feed on the soil, geophagia, as we call it. Geo being earth, phagy, or the eating of. So in this instance, it's geophagia, where they eat the dirt. And lots of mineral salts you would expect around water holes with the evaporation. And in sort of river lines or drainage lines, there will be a lot of leaching of minerals and then concentrated in the area around a water hole where it settles. And then if it evaporates, leaving that concentrated in the soil. So we find a lot of the animals then go in and feed on that, particularly in the dry season. And that's exactly where we find ourselves now. I think the baboons are probably just foraging in and around the elephant dung. It's a good time for them to be picking up insects now. They're starting to burst to life again, and you'll probably find lots of insects in and around those elephant dung balls. Plus, in elephant dung, you'll also have a lot of seeds and vegetation that is not digested. So they can even access that, and it's a nice concentrated point where they could find that with the elephant having done most of the work for them. Remember, quite easy to sex baboons. And you see that drab brown colored bum, that's a male. The females have a very red, raw looking bum, and that's obviously the redder it is, the more attractive they are to the males. And when I was studying, I've spoken of this before, but we did ethology, and our ethology lecturer said with primates, redness is trying to attract mates and males. So the females often use the color red as that attractive model. And this could even be applied to human ladies wearing red lipstick. You don't really see ladies wearing yellow lipstick. Blue lipstick, maybe there's a little bit of that nowadays. But traditionally, red is the color of attraction.
Do you want to touch the lives of future protectors of our Earth? Thanks to our wonderful WildEarth explorers, WildEarth Kids is back. Sign your class up for WildEarth schools and enjoy a special virtual field trip to Africa with interactive learning tailored for kids.
Very warm welcome to the kids from WildEarth Primary School.
We'll be dedicating the first hour of Sunset Safaris every Wednesday to our planet's future defenders. WildEarth, it's in your nature.
Always nice to see a dazzle of stripes coming in to drink, and this is probably when they're at their most photographic, especially when they're all in a line. You've got that real mosaic of blacks and whites, and then when they're drinking and there's reflections as well, it just makes it absolutely beautiful. Well, Mike, yeah, I definitely think hyena, both of them, really. But I think if I had to put which one is ugliest between the hyenas, I'd probably, I don't know. It's obviously objective, if you say, or is it subjective? I'll go with the brown hyena being the uglier between the two, the spotted and the brown hyena. Even though I have a great affinity for brown hyena, and I really love to see them out in the bush. Yeah, but hyena has to be in there. So who's the one missing? We've got the warthog, we've got the wildebeest, we've got the hyena, we've got the marabou stork. There's one missing out of the ugly five. It's obviously just a bit of fun and games, so let's not get uh, uh, too worried about calling animals ugly. It's just for fun. Righty, so staying with the theme of the ugly five, let's go and have a look at another one at the African Tau. Yes, there he is. Not so full of mud as the other ones and not having a scratch either. This one's getting down to the very important task of grazing. Now, pigs do have an amazing sense of smell, all of them within the Suidae family. You can see how this one is truffling. And I think that word truffling actually comes down to the pigs. I think it's in the Alps, but I think there it's more domestic pigs, but they've probably all got also got wild boars that are able to smell out the black truffles. I think it's the most expensive fungus in the world, mushroom. And so, consequently, humans were also using these pigs to sniff out this very lucrative mushroom and the black truffles. But they were finding that the pigs were eating too many of them. So, they do now use dogs instead of pigs, and they're getting a better yield because the dogs aren't eating the truffles. Right, so Mouse, who's one of the zoomies, and the zoomies, I must just add, are the guys that help us with the cameras and operating them. So, yes, the vulture, but I must say it's probably the lappet faced vulture. Surely. What do you guys think? I think they're probably the ugliest of all the vultures. Decent set of tusks and whiskers on this warthog. I say whiskers, it's more like lamb chops or sideburns, but quite impressive. This chap would give Elvis a good run for his money, except his lamb chops are white, not black. Righty, so it seems like we're sticking in the Madikwe Game Reserve. Lots happening, but let's head back for a surprise at Jamala. See how quickly things can change. We were just here, there were no elephants, and a few seconds away, and we've got a number of them. So it looks like more coming in as well. Breeding herd arriving. There's a couple of youngsters. The baboons seemingly moving off. I think they've had their drink, they've had their play, and now they're going to have to go off and forage. Lots more energy required at this time of year to find food. So, and it's normally not so nutritious as it might be after the rains come. So they need to work harder for less. So it's important that they don't spend too much time mucking about. Otherwise, they're not going to get the calories that they require. So Lillian, nice question. Yep, it's the hotter it is, the earlier the animals generally start coming down to drink. So it's one of those resources. Without water, you don't survive. There are some animals, obviously, that require less. When you think of the likes of springbok and oryx, but even them, if there's water available and it's very hot, they will then go and seek water. So generally during the night and so on, they'll prefer to go feed, because it also then allows them to walk further distances with it being nice and cool. So they normally try and get a lot of their food intake at night, and then especially if it gets very hot during the day and it heats up early, you'll find them coming down to the waterhole earlier on in the morning. So we find in summer lots more time around the waterholes until we get the rains. And then you find that they don't necessarily need to go to this area where they're concentrated around a waterhole. There's water availability all over the place, so they don't need to walk far or anywhere from their feeding grounds. They can drink out of puddles and little ponds. And the other thing is that around waterholes like this in the dry season, there's an overlapping of territories and home ranges. So there is also then the real big risk of conflict here at the waterholes. So they try to, animals don't want conflict. It's something that can, be life-threatening. If you get an injury or, you can get killed as well. But injuries very often mean death in the bush. So they prefer not to go into conflict, and that's going to happen around a concentration point like a waterhole. So as soon as there is rain, you find that the animals disperse and they're not concentrated in a spot like this. But this now heading into the end of the dry season, sometimes it continues and maybe the rain doesn't even come. And then the real concentrations of the animals around these points, it does help us as guides however, because we just need to then go to the waterhole and the animals come to you, such as what we're doing here from the waterholes as we view this on live at the waterhole. But as we go into the rainy season, even though it's going to be very hot, you might not find the concentrations that we're getting now, because the animals, as I've mentioned, don't need to come and risk the conflict that they are doing now. And just to go further on that point of the animals dispersing after the rains, many times I would take guests to Etosha in Namibia, and we this time of year is excellent because the animals all concentrated around the waterhole. So what we do is we literally drive from waterhole to waterhole. And the animals then are all there in massive numbers. It's very impressive, and it just seems like there's so many animals. But then I would leave Etosha and head back to Windhoek. That group would leave. I would get the next group. And within 10 days, sometimes even less, I would be back at Etosha. But with the rains having come in between, I get there, and the previous group has just said what an extravaganza of wildlife, an absolute festival, and they could never have thought that they would have seen so many animals, around the waterholes. And then the next group, we arrive, and it's like the animals have disappeared. It's like there's no animals left in Etosha. And the next group, totally disappointed and almost thinking like it's a reserve not worth visiting. But it's just the luck of the draw, which side of the rains you are. And so whenever I'm going on tours and on safari in Namibia, I always hope that the rain hasn't quite yet arrived. Otherwise, it's quite disappointing for the guests. You have this real change of landscape, the booming of all the plants and the colors that come with it, etc., and a lot of the dropping of the babies, the calves, the lambs. But with the dispersal of the animals, it does make it quite difficult. And then when I first started guiding as well, I always made the mistake in my first couple of years of saying how amazing it's going to be in Etosha, and there's just so many animals next to the waterholes. And then when we arrive there and the rains have come, and the disappointment from the guests, and then it turns out it's almost my fault for telling them how many animals there's going to be, and we don't find any. So with my experience, you learn these things as you go. I don't say that anymore. I always tell them the potential is there, but it depends on the rain and, bringing that all in. And in so doing, to set and manage the expectations. I think that's probably been one of the biggest lessons that I've learned as a guide, is to immediately manage expectations of guests, and not to build something up to the point that when we get there and it's not like what you said, the disappointment and as a result, almost your fault.
Those sounds just go straight through you.
It's like there's one little young elephant here on the right. He's going to get himself a lovely scratch on that rock. So we have discussed it before, and I just want to touch on the subject of the amount of elephants that there are here in the Madikwe Game Reserve. And I mean, this is an amazing conservation success here in the reintroduction of all of these animals in this part of the country. But currently, they're at the carrying capacity of the amount of elephants. There's over 1,500 of them. It's only on 75,000. Well, it's a huge reserve, 75,000 hectares. However, it's a semi-arid part of the country, so it's relatively low carrying capacity if you compare it to the likes of the Addo Elephant National Park, which is much smaller, but the concentrations of elephants there is much higher because they can sustain it, being in the Cape Floral Kingdom and all year rainfall. So the landscape, the vegetation, everything can handle a much higher concentration. However, here they're at that spot now that it's going to be difficult, or I don't know what is going to be decided, what to do with all of the elephants, because if they keep on increasing in numbers, which they will, you're gonna head to a point where there's going to be a sort of a substantial die-off of animals, because there's just going to be a lot of degradation of the vegetation from the impact of the elephants, which they have a huge impact. And if there's too many of them, then you can imagine that impact gets even bigger. So at some stage, there's going to be a sort of die off of species, and it will probably include elephants as well. And how long it will take for the area to recover. So, in the past, they used to practice culling and get the animal numbers down. But this is not socially acceptable anymore. And I'm not arguing one way or the other. I'm just saying what was done in the past. And so that has been stopped. They've also sort of used contraception with females. They've also done vasectomies on males. And this is not just particular to Madikwe. I'm talking of sort of numbers control of elephants around in the different national parks and reserves. And I've been involved with both contraception projects as well as the vasectomies. But this then brings a real problem in their social standing within the groups. And then you start picking up issues around that, where the females aren't giving birth. And so they sort of get ousted or sidelined by the females that are. So there's an issue there. There does then, also, because it's a real social problem with slowing down the actual natural breeding cycles of these animals. So that's not an ultimate solution either. There's speak of trying to get this corridor going between the Pilanesberg National Park and the Madikwe Game Reserve. But, that might take another 20 years to get going, if at all. With the expansion of the human population, I don't see that actually happening ever. And as well as private interests with landowners in between. It's a lovely idea, but I don't know how feasible it will be. Even though the guys are sort of forging on, trying to do it. It's a similar thing in the Addo region of the Eastern Cape. They're trying to make the corridor between the Woody Cape section and the Addo Elephant National Park itself, between all those reserves, including Shamwari and Amakala and Kiriga, Sibuya, etc., trying to link them up, which, once again, fantastic idea, but with private interests and landowners, not everybody being able to agree on certain things, I see that being a difficult thing to implement. So what is the solution? I don't know. We haven't reached it. So if anyone's got some fabulous ideas, send it to us. We'd love to hear it. Okay, so that discussion out the way, it is just something to ponder on. And if you have any ideas, well, that's, I think, part and parcel of the whole concept of this show, is to get people entrenched in nature and get them talking about it and aware of different wildlife and natural issues. Well, this is one of them. What do you do with overpopulated elephant groups in different national parks, etc.? Let's talk about it. But while we think about it, let's head on back to Kenya and Africam Old Donyo. Maybe we just need to introduce more zebra, because it seems like they know how to get rid of the elephants. See this old boy here with a floppy ear? He doesn't stand a chance. Not with this amount of zebra anyway. So when we used to drive down to the coast from the Transvaal, as it was at the time, we used to play a game on the multiple hours drive down to the coast of spotting a blue gulf. And the one who could spot the most blue gulfs on the way down to the coast won. Now, this is obviously when we were children, but looking at these zebra, I do like to play little games. Who can spot the half tails or no tails? How many can you spot? Because I think I've seen at least one. He had half a tail. But that's the game now. Especially looking at this real dazzle of stripes. At least it gives you something to concentrate on. Oh, looks like a nice little baby oryx there on the right. Fringe-eared oryx baby drinking from its mom. It can't be very old. It still looks a little bit wobbly, I think. So no half-tails yet. I'm sure I saw one, but maybe I was mistaken. Let's keep looking. Well, the elephant's put his tail up. That is normally an indication of their mood. So I think he's quite irritated with all of these zebra. There's one on the left. Third from the left is no tail.
Do you love relaxing at a waterhole with the sights and sounds of Africa all around you? Well, we have some really exciting news for you. From August 1st, Africam is joining forces with WildEarth to bring the majesty of Africa right into your living room with 9 incredible new waterhole cameras from across South Africa and Kenya. Get ready to embark on a new journey. This is Live at the Waterhole.
So you can see here as well, slowly but surely increasing in numbers are the elephants. More and more, but there'll probably be some shifting off. Here comes a big bull onto the scene, and you can see that small breeding herd just moving out the way. He obviously means business. So you can find at this time of year, even though when the rains haven't come yet, you can still have a little bit of new growth coming through. And it does seem like here in the foreground, there's a little bit of greenery. So I think that might be the grass trying to grow, even though it's still very dry. But that'll obviously change very quickly when the rains do come, and everything will just burst to life. But I think that's what these wildebeest are maybe feeding on, just this new growth here. There seems to be a little bit of action between these elephants. I don't know if it's between the bulls, and that's having an effect on the breeding herds. That bull that made his way in, that the breeding herd moved off from, ran off in a hurry, and then we got this other bull that arrived. So it's very interesting just to watch the social interactions at play. And once again, we refer back to this concentration of animals next to the waterhole, which won't, necessarily meet up if it wasn't for the very dry nature of the bush currently. So it's almost like, if you can imagine, different villages coming together at a water point that they all need, and then there can be a lot of discussions, social interaction, but there can also be disputes as well, and conflict at those points as well, with a real concentration of animals. And within the same species, a very sociable species, gregarious, such as elephants, there's a lot of social interactions, but it can be both positive and negative. And sometimes when the bulls come in, there can be consternation from the females with the youngsters. And then there can also be fighting between the different bull elephants as well. But for the most part, you do notice that there's a lot of greeting ceremonies that go on, and a lot of time spent not drinking, just standing around. And I would assume not being able to hear or understand elephant, but from their behavior, you can see that they are communicating with each other. You see this guy now chasing this baboon off. Looks like a young bull getting up to nonsense. I think he's just decided that he's going to have a go at the baboon. Big man, eh? See how he's put his ears out, trying to make himself look bigger. Not too sure of himself, but making out as if he's the big man. And we often see that with young bulls on foot and with the vehicle. You can almost see that they're trying to look like they mean business, but with the amount of showboating that they're doing, they're actually unsure of themselves. And so those are the ones we don't really worry about. It's the ones that don't put their ears out and don't try and make themselves look bigger, that when they act aggressively towards you, they really do mean business. It's like he might get left behind by the herd, so he's going to have to catch up now. Okay, so now that the elephants are starting to dissipate and move off, I think we'll do the same, but we're sticking in Madikwe. Let's go back to Africa and Tau. Where we're reverting to birding and crocodiling. There's another one off on the right there, just in the water. We've got a grey heron, white-faced whistling ducks. They also call them, I believe, tree ducks because they're one of the only ducks that can actually roost in a tree. I've never seen them doing that, but that's according to the books and the writings. Anybody seen a white-faced whistling duck in a tree? Well, they must be called that for some reason. So Mallory, yeah, I definitely think that croc will go for the heron. I think it could go for any of those birds. That's the thing about crocodiles. You just never know when they're going to attack. And they'll lie dead still like that for weeks, months. And it's just that one day when you walk past it and it just snaps you. So, I'm not going to say yes, it will, because maybe this crocodile prefers to eat fish. But they're ever the opportunists. If something is next to it or it gets up to when it's on the hunt, it will take it. I've seen crocodiles taking hammerkops, hardy-daws, ducks, geese. But I think predominantly in a waterhole like this, so maybe most likely take more fish, catfish in particular, maybe some frogs as well. But these are quite big crocodiles. So, yeah, I think this heron's got to obviously keep its wits about it. And yesterday we did actually see that because one of the crocodiles was on the hunt, was moving in and around this bull elephant. And the heron was nearby hunting as well. And then suddenly the crocodile went in right near close to it. And both the white-faced whistling ducks and the heron, they backed off and they immediately got the sense that something was amiss. And so luckily avoided them, the crocodile. Whether it was going to hunt them if they didn't do that, I'm not quite sure because it didn't happen. But it did look like the potential was very much real. Yeah, that's the difficult thing with crocodiles. You could sit here for months videoing them all the time, and you might get one kill out of them. Whereas I've found that I've just gotten lucky when I've witnessed crocodiles actually performing or going through with a kill. It's just the right place at the right time. But to actually sit here and wait for it, yeah, it could be a while. Looks like some red hartebeest also coming in for a drink now, joining the wildebeest and the zebra. So Picasso, herons, yeah, the grey heron can move. It all depends on the food source. And you see now this crocodile just moving in front of that heron. You see it is watching it. It's nervous of it, and it's definitely taking notice. And so are the white-faced whistling ducks. So they do understand the threat. Um, and the heron can definitely move. It will move if there's not too much food availability here. They'll normally nest. They need quite prominent trees to be able to nest in and roost in overnight. They won't just stand there the whole time. They do need to get up into a tree, for their overnight period. So there needs to be that available to them, and circumstances change, the situation changes in its preferred hunting spot, and the area that it can nest in, then it will definitely move. So you see the crocodile was sunning itself. Now it's become active again, and now it's going to maybe go and sit and just wait for an opportunity, which may or may not come, and then just repeat the cycle. It's almost like a puff at a snake, where they just sort of set themselves in one spot and then wait for an unassuming character, something that doesn't realize it's there, to come very close, and then they pounce.
Do you remember the stars of Juma? Tandi, Hosanna, Darkmane, and many more will appear in our tribute. In honor of Animal Remembrance Month, join us as we look back at the characters that stole millions of hearts across the globe. Watch it live. Wild Earth. We are Safari.
So, and we've hopped on over back to Kenya and the Old Donyo Lodge and Bundibasha. There are, in fact, Gemsbok in Madikwe, so that's confirmed. And we've seen Springbok there, so it's obviously, I was thinking there may be a cur there, but I wasn't quite sure. That's why I just had to double check. But maybe they're not in that big numbers, or maybe they just don't prefer that particular area. It might be a seasonal thing. I've only just started watching that particular waterhole, and I haven't seen any Gemsbok there as far as I can remember, unless I'm just mixing it up. But I don't think I have. So it would be nice to see them there, but I can't tell you the exact reason why we're not seeing any Gemsbok there. I don't know how many numbers there are in Madikwe, but maybe they're just not, or they don't prefer that particular area for this time of the year. As I say, maybe we'll see them at another time. But look at this, concentrating on where we are now at Old Donyo, lots of elephant bulls. I wonder if we're going to see that big tusker with his tusks that nearly touch the ground. And so the same with the interactions that I was speaking about in Madikwe, at Jamala there, the breeding herds and the different bulls, etc. It's fascinating to watch here because this is all similarly sized bulls, and you would expect that there could be some conflict between them. Normally that would be, especially when one is coming into must, then he's got lots of testosterone or heightened state of testosterone flowing through his blood. And that's when you'll obviously have more conflict. Now, as I've started speaking of that, we start to see a little bit more conflict. Now, you see how he's swinging his leg? That we use when we're out on foot. If an elephant does that to you, a charge is imminent. So it was almost like that was part of his warning to this seemingly subordinate bull. He's going to have a real go at him if he carries on with his nonsense. So we can't hear and understand what the elephants are saying, but we can look and interpret their body language. And those are one of the things that we use to our advantage, both when we're out on vehicle and on foot, but particularly on foot, because we don't have the safety of the vehicle. So if an elephant had to stand in front of me like that, very close, and swing his leg, that's when I would give an aggressive response, i.e. clap my hands or shout at him. Not clapping of the hands is not normally a good thing. Maybe just tapping on the butt of my rifle. I'll never point a weapon at an elephant unless I'm going to be ready to shoot him. But if it's very close, you might just do that anyway, just to be sure, and tap on the back of the rifle, and then he might, that aggressive response to his potential imminent charge could, diffuse the situation. Standing your ground is a must. If you had to walk away while he's swinging his leg at you like that, I can almost guarantee he is going to charge you. So it's not a good idea. But it's not to say that we need to be shouting and clapping and making a noise at elephants. Sometimes it's just a response, just like them, in the terms of your body language, your posture, and the way you react. It's not as relaxed as I've seen these bulls in the last few days. There's a little bit more edginess to it today. I wonder if it's the heat, maybe, making them a little bit more moody. Would make sense. But maybe there's more testosterone coming into play as well. I don't see any clear indication of one that's in must, but they're all pretty wet now, so it's difficult to tell if they are leaking, between their back legs. That's a clear-cut indication of a bull in must. They don't seem to have that real swagger that bulls in the real heightened must have. But you never know. Maybe one or two of them are coming into must, and so a bit more testosterone, and so a little bit more moodiness. Oh, and a Maasai giraffe. I wonder if it's the same one. He's going to come and try his luck. I think he's going to probably have to wait a while before he gets in there once these elephants move off.
WildEarth is home to Africa's endangered unicorn. We aim to inspire the protection of our rhinos by connecting people to them.
I am here with a beautiful female rhino and her calf.
Join our naturalists as we track our favorite rhinos on safari.
Hello, big boy.
Watch it live and join the rush this Rhino Day with WildEarth.
So just really enjoying spending time with these big bulls. It's always special and always worth a nice long visit. So once again, a little bit of an issue there at Old Donyo, but never fear, we've got so many other locations to go to, and one of my favorites here is Grandmaster Ugwe, once again on his mound from Kung Fu Panda. He is rather precariously balanced there. I think he might even be sliding. Is he going to plop off back into the water, or is he going to stay? Or even get on top? They're not the best climbers, are terrapins, this being a marsh terrapin. There are a number of them in this waterhole. And they seem to all jostle and fight for this particular spot. Is it just me, or is he in the perfect spot for that, looks like a sedge, just to be poking him in his eye? Well, I suppose that's what eyelids are for. He's showing us the exact purpose of them. So at least the sun's out a little bit earlier. It looked like it was raining. Very overcast and grey. Now it's nice and sunny. Yeah, Jordan, the director, saying that these should be part of the Ugly Five. I don't know. I think they're pretty cool characters. Well, they do have a particular smell about them as well. I've unfortunately pulled a couple of them onto my boat when I've been fishing, and I tell you what, you do not want one of these on your boat. They absolutely stink. So not only do they look strange, they also have funny smells. And now he's showing us his best yoga moves again. Say what you like about them, they always look happy because their face has got a permanent smile. Looks like he might be stuck. Yeah, I think he's wheel spinning now. He's not getting any traction there. So what are the bets? Is he going to continue on up this, or is he going to plop off into the water? I think the latter. Oh, he's got somebody that's looking at his spot, just gone under. He might have some company. Okay, so I don't know. I was hoping we were going to see this guy move, but I think he might be stuck for a while. So we'll leave him happily smiling, and let's head to the Pilanesberg National Park and Kwa Maritani. Where the theme of elephants continues. Nice and hot, and that bodes well for them coming down for a splash. This is also a fabulous birding spot, so keep your eyes peeled. Looks to be, is that a hamakop or something on the opposite side? Can't see the detail, but we do have lots of Indian miners. There comes one onto the scene. There's a blacksmith lapwing. Indian miners, if you didn't know, exotic invasive species, and they are living true to their name. You can hear the Indian miners calling as well. They got quite a nice call, but I've always never thought it's nice. It's like you get a negative feeling towards exotic invasive species. With me having studied conservation, and we always kept those as kind of vermin, and how we could, try to get rid of them, etc. So, yes, although they deserve to live. I just think they don't deserve to live here, where they shouldn't be. They don't naturally occur. But anyway, that's just my feeling. but they are an extremely invasive species. They're a lot bigger and more aggressive than a lot of the starling species, and all the birds that are sort of same size or smaller. They do fight for living space and feeding grounds, etc. So not a nice bird to have, but down to us as humans and a result of our activities that they are here in the first place. So it's not their fault. So just while we're sitting here watching this elephant bull enjoy the water, I hope he carries on doing so. A bit of a history of the Pilanesberg National Park. In 1969, Potchefstroom University recommended that the area of Pilanesberg be developed into a recreation and nature reserve. This was also supported by a number of politicians, but it wasn't until 1979 that the Pilanesberg National Park was established. Southern Sun had, under the ownership of Sol Kerzner in 1976, applied for the land surrounding Munkwe Dam to build its hotel and casino complex. This was refused to make way for the park by the late Kgosi Lucas Mangope, president of Paputa Tswana. Sun City was thus developed bordering the south of the reserve. Like Madikwe, Pilanesberg used to be farmland. Between 1969 and 1979, the land had to be repaired. Alien plants were removed, eroded land was rehabilitated, houses and windmills were knocked down and taken away. An old fluorite mine was also dismantled. 6,000 animals were relocated in Operation Genesis, which at the time was the largest movement of animals ever attempted. 1.5 million rand was spent on the game fence surrounding the park. while 1.8 million rand was spent on the game itself. It was the largest game translocation in the world until the later Operation Phoenix in sister park Madikwe, which translocated 10,000 animals. So nice and interesting that. Many of the animals were introduced before the fence was finished, and so were kept in a holding area adjacent to Manyani camp. This area soon became too small, and over 200 animals died as a result. Even so, Pilanesberg is one of the few parks in southern Africa to have a near complete assemblage of its former fauna, as well as having the third largest white rhino population in the world. Until the late 1980s, the number of animals was kept at around 50% of the maximum carrying capacity. This has been allowed to increase significantly in the last decade. Lion introduction or reintroduction was started in 1993, and now there are over 43 of these animals in the park. African wild dogs were released into the park in 1999 and are managed as a part of a larger population for genetic variety of this endangered carnivore. Very interesting indeed.
Get ready for your daily dose of African wildlife magic. Be enchanted by the intimate moments shared by the animals as they drink, play, and interact in their natural habitat. With our daily wildlife videos, you'll experience the thrill of safari adventures without ever having to leave your seat. Let the wild adventure unfold right before your eyes. Africam, always live, always wild.
All right, so change of place once again, and we've gone to the Africam Nkoro Dam. This is in the Greater Kruger National Park, in the Sabi Sands, to be specific. Yesterday, we also had a lot of elephants here. It was wonderful. They were all around the camera here on this side, a nice breeding herd. A little bit less of them today, but they're here nonetheless. Wonderful. I think this is now a little breeding herd that's arriving. A couple of little youngsters. That's awesome. You can hear the meaves, long-tailed starlings, calling there. That's the predominant call that you can hear. And it is interesting to note a little bit here. It seems like we can see these elephants' backbone a little bit more prominently than the likes of where they are in Kenya. I know those are big bulls, where these being females. But I do get the feeling that, times are a little bit tough at this time of the year. Maybe there's not that great food availability. I'm sure we'll see them sort of fill out a little bit once the rain comes and the quality of the food increases once more after that happens. Lenny, thanks for your kind words. Yeah, as per usual, just trying my best to bring something new and interesting every day. So that's why I also like it when there's lots of interesting questions that are posed, because your answers are only as good as the questions you receive. And it does then lead me down different rabbit holes and different discussions and debates, etc. And I'll never profess to know everything about anything. It's all down to discussions, what I've read, researched, and what I've experienced. And I try to balance all of those things up, and then chat with people and also take heed of their experiences. You should never say never. And the older I get, the more that this really rings true for me. When I was a young guide, I would always say lots of things that would never occur, or you'll never do this or that or whatnot. And as I've gotten older, you realize that that's a mistake. I've said that to guests. You'll never find an animal in that, in this reserve or whatever, and it turns out that we find them, or you'll never get this kind of bird that will be in this park, and we round the corner and there's one of those birds. So I think it's that little baby elephant looks like he's walking on water. It must be quite shallow over there. So yeah, just good to have nice in-depth discussions and meaningful ecological principles that we delve into, and bring in all your international experience from the viewers. So we do obviously have quite a big South African viewership, but there's a lot of international viewers now, as well as WildEarth sort of expands its reach. And so that's lovely to hear people getting in touch from the United Arab Emirates, from the UK, from America. I find it wonderful. And I hope it continues and it grows in this vein. So Seagate, I think, is the name. Stuart. Sorry, pardon me. Elephants, yeah, they don't really clean their tusks because they use them for all sorts. They'll use them to break into trees and get the bark off. So they use it as kind of a spike. And that's generally what they use it as, is a spike. You can see here they also use it as, but generally spiking the bark of trees. They can sometimes spike into termite mounds to access those nutrients that the termites make available in the mound itself. They can spike into the ground where it's very hard and they want to dig. I've seen the desert elephants doing this regularly, in the ephemeral rivers, so that they can obviously smell the water. So they sort of use it as a pick to loosen up the soil, and then they use their feet to dig it away. So it's a real tool for them, and they don't really brush it. I think it's sometimes they can be very dirty. Other times they go for a swim and it all washes off. But I don't think they really spend time in actually flossing it and brushing it and keeping them clean. It is what it is. For whatever they've used it for last, we'll have the remains on there. And then if they go for a swim, maybe then it will be washed off. But I don't think they purposefully ever go about actively cleaning their tusks. I've never seen that anyway. And it's just worn down from the activities that they do with it. We do find that they seem to prefer one tusk over the other and use it more. So we call them either right or left tusked. And that's one of the things I often get guests to try and work out, especially if we're in amongst them, which tusk do they prefer. And then, it's just a nice activity to check when we're in their presence. So this little one here on the right, you can see just the tusk starting to come through. So that would mean he's probably between 2 and 3 years of age. He's still a youngster, but growing up nicely. So it seems the overcast weather is coming and going. It's more cloudy than not, but I think there are some gaps in the cloud every now and then. I don't think it's going to be cold here, but it's probably cooler than it would have been if there were no clouds. I'm pretty sure it's not cold because the elephants are still spraying themselves with water and all of that. So judging by that, we can then also judge the temperature.
Do you remember the late characters of Juma? Do you miss Dark Mane's strength? Do you wonder how many cubs Purple Eye left behind? On the 17th of September, WildEarth takes a trip down memory lane in honor of Animal Remembrance Month. Join Tessa and James for a special Ask Me Anything and learn about the history of our fallen favorites and the future of their legacies. Watch it live on your nearest device. WildEarth, it's in your nature.
Okay, I was wondering if it was the Hardy-Dar at my house or if it was in the MC in Johannesburg, but it was in fact that harassing Hardy-Dar at Nkoro on the side, who's now disappeared off. And if you didn't know, the what is it? The collective noun of Hardy-Dars, it is a harassment of Hardy-Dars, and I think that is probably one of the most apt collective nouns out there. Watching elephants, especially when they're nice and relaxed like this, it does really give you the real rhythm of the bush. I mean, they don't have the human interests and worrying about catching trains and being in a hurry. You know, everything is just about survival. And sometimes, most of the time, it's actually very slow, the things that take place. Yes, there's the heightened anxiety, and they can be chasing each other around and so on. But in general, elephants are rather placid and calm animals, and it always hits home when, especially when you're in a hurry in a vehicle, whether it's to get back for breakfast or for the Springboks rugby match or whatever in the World Cup final. You get stuck behind a breeding herd of elephants or bulls, doesn't matter. It's almost like they understand that you're in a hurry and they'll either stay in the road doing absolutely nothing, blocking you, or they'll push over a tree, blocking the road as well. It's just every time that and it hasn't been very often, but there have been the times, and probably a couple dozen times in over about 25 years that I've been working in the bush, that I've been in a serious hurry and been caught behind elephants, breeding herds, bulls, whatever it might be. And they've literally held me hostage in those times. Like all the other times when I haven't been in a hurry, they move out my way, nice and relaxed, and it's probably just a minute or two and off they go. But in those moments, every single time when I was in a serious hurry, they blocked my way for an extended period of time, almost on purpose. And I'm pretty sure they do it. I know that elephants have got a sense of humor. We see that in all the game reserves. They can push a tree over in any direction they want, but they'll push the tree over the well-used roads, almost just like a fun way of watching you having to come and clear it out the way. And I definitely feel they can also feel impatience. And when they feel that, well, they even make it worse. Have you had any of those kind of interactions with elephants? I've had lots, but it doesn't change my mind about them. I think they're highly intelligent. I know they're highly intelligent, and they really got lots of character to them, and that being part of it. So at the time, I might have been angry, but it really does still add to what I feel for them. So Sam Jiv Roy, you were speaking about elephants and they're drinking and feeding, that's what it looks like they're doing, but a lot of social communication and interaction with them going on at the same time as well. And I must agree with you. Uh, it's just so interesting to watch, and that's why I've spent so many years of my guiding career actually just specializing on following elephants, and in particular a very special group of elephants in the Namib Desert. um, Spending time with those guys is very different too. But any time spent with elephants, I think, wouldn't be taken off a person's life. It's just very, very special. It's humbling, but it's almost awakening as well, because you feel in being in the presence of such a big, wise, intelligent creature. And there's just so much going on, and there's very often a bond, that they're curious, they come on over to you, and there's almost very meaningful time spent when they are curious and they come and spend time in your presence, especially when they approach you in your personal space and you haven't invaded theirs, and they sort of make that decision to come into your personal space, and then they respect you in that space, and you have this interaction. I've done it thousands of times, but every time almost feels like the first time. That's how special it is. Oh, is that little youngster now trying to charge that little three-banded plover? Wow, you couldn't have picked a smaller target, buddy. But if that's what it takes to get a little bit of practice, maybe next time you can do it to a guinea fowl, and then a warthog, and then an actual elephant. And that's the progression we'd like to see. So, Lenny, you're asking a question around evolution and if the animals have done evolving. Absolutely not, Lenny. I think evolution continues on a daily, on a minuscule level every single day. When I don't think humans are done evolving, I don't think anything is done evolving, because we learn from our experiences, we adapt, and according to our environment and the limitations we have within that environment, and then the generations that come after us, that almost have that intrinsically in them, and then they evolve even further. So it all depends on the resources that you have available, and the things that you do, and then you adapt and you survive. So I don't think evolution can stop, Lenny, no matter how we would want it to stop or try to make it stop, it's not possible, because as long as we have living organisms, there will be evolution.
Are you looking to take your bond with the wild to the next level? Download our app and access in-depth chats with our naturalists and special guests. Connect and converse in real time on our Ask Me Anythings, fireside chats, hangouts, and town halls. WeChat, available on the WildEarth app. WildEarth, we are Safari.
Is that mommy saying to this little one, you've had enough? Nervous hide? Or maybe it just said something it shouldn't have, and she was just correcting it. Lovely pose from this one on the left. That would make a beautiful photo. So, as per usual, now, unfortunately, heading slowly towards the end of the show. But don't be afraid, because later on this afternoon, there will be the Sunset Safari. So you can get your safari fix from 2:30. And then tomorrow morning, once again, at 6:30 a.m., the Sunrise Safari. And then, of course, we'll be doing this all over again tomorrow at 9:30. So I hope you've enjoyed today's show, and we hope to see you again tomorrow as well. It's not over just yet, but we're just about done. So enjoying the last little seconds of this small breeding herd. So Cameron, thanks for joining us. Thanks for your comment, and thanks for your kind words. I'm glad you learned a little bit. But please feel free to teach me anything about the wildlife wherever you are in the world. I sort of really only know African animals and what goes on here. I'm not too used to any of the animals, from the northern hemisphere. I've traveled there quite a bit, but lots to learn. And so that's lovely. I think Mommy has now decided to take that little one off. And it's almost right in time for the end of the show. One last straggler looking for one last drink. As always, thanks to the wildlife for being the stars of the show. Without them, there wouldn't be one. So I know they can't hear me, but thank you. And thank you to the viewers for joining us. Of course, we hope to see you again tomorrow. Thanks to the whole WildEarth team, from directors, producers, tech, everybody there. You guys make it happen and you guys rock. I'm do the easy part, just sitting here and talking nonsense. Well, that's what I say. I know it's not nonsense, but it's just an expression, I suppose. So with the last little drink there, that's going to be also me signing out. My name's Ralph Kirsten. We'll see you again tomorrow. Bye for now.